Can we just all collect all this beauty for my life of peace, love, respect? Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. Ha ha. Times back to take control. Attack the while he's attack the while he's sleep. He just marched and booted and turned it into something sweet. Nothing stopping the juggernaut once set in motion. Evil clown bomb down and right back to school coasting. Dude posting a little too close, then cramping my style. I play the speaker close while I'm cracking a smile. After all, what's a party? Should be dancing and smoking. Laughing. Come on in, family. We finally made it. Wow. We did it all together. We finally made it. To the last, the 21st episode. Build with Big King. Hey. Peace, love, respect. Yep. Fellas, show your area love and hoods up. Aggressive because these strong's like the king. Come on. Final dancing with the ladies is probably 2 or 3. Who are we to do anything less? All right, come on in with me, folks. The world of negativity, pain, and hate. Nothing lasts forever. I thought I told the devil. They trapped the world in this misery on so many levels. But we expressing our happiness together with boom. This party ain't over like no time soon. This party ain't over like no time soon. We finally made it. Wow. We did it all together. We finally made it now. We can't enjoy it forever. We finally made it. How can we just all collect all this beauty for my life of peace, love, respect? We finally made it. Wow. We did it all together. We finally made it now. We can't enjoy it forever. We finally made it. How can we just all collect all this beauty for my life of peace, love, respect? All together. Yeah. Thank you, family. Welcome once again. Man, the 21st episode, right? It's been a magnificent season, right? We have had some deep and lengthy and interesting, vibrant, electrifying, enlightening, just magnificent conversations, and created a forum and a family atmosphere for ourselves to be able to bounce some of our best and most clear thought ideas on some of the most important topics and issues that we're dealing with today, right? And to have a forum like that is exactly what I would have sort of hoped or wished for as I envisioned this venture of starting this podcast, Buildin with Big King, right? And you know, sort of expanding my platform in that way. And it's just been magnificent, truly. I bit my lip. Excuse me. If nothing else, we definitely keep it real. But yeah, it has been magnificent. And I'm grateful in a multitude of ways, to depths of which words could not fully express. So thank you all. I love you all, right? Truly. I'm going to go ahead and just break into the subject matter, allow some time for folks to come in. And either way, you're going to catch it later on, but the episode is here. Here we go. Certainly, as always, feel free to either announce yourself in the chat. I'd love to formally welcome you to the conversation. Or if not, you can just hang back and check out the conversation. Either way, I love you and I thank you for being in here with me. And, you know,
as we let other folks come on in and chime in and sharing the conversation. Again, I just appreciate you all so much for making this happen for me, right? Um, for us, and for it being in us, right? Again, it's just magnificent, and I'm grateful beyond what my words can truly and adequately express. So thank you all, truly. I love you. I can't say that enough. But I'm gonna go ahead and open up a little bit, or open up into a little bit of what this last episode is sort of about as far as the main topic. But really, we're going to end up opening it up. Heather is in here with me. Thank you so much, my dear. Can always rely on you, and I thank you so much. That is heartfelt love from me to you. Truly, I appreciate you. So yeah, this episode, I just wanted to actually start out and make this statement that we can get into some conversation. But I did want to say, if we have not learned anything else, then I hope we've gotten to this point. So, we know that we are all, and everything is made up of energy at some point, right? And it is never at rest, always in motion in some vibrational frequency. The frequency refers to how frequently it is in motion or vibrating in a specific time frame or observable measurement of time, right? So that's what frequency actually is, how frequently the vibration is occurring. So we know that everything is of some vibrational frequency and is energetic in nature. So, we need to also, and I think we've come to understand that the push-pull of energy on the planet, right, is observed also in the universe, right? We know that there is always some energetic push-pull happening in the universe, or the multiverse, however you want to term it, right? And such is the same on the planet. The ebbs and flows also of the human collective um, are always shifting, right, in one direction or the other. It's never stagnant, right? It's just never an exact inequality, or at least there has not been. What are we heading for, right? Balance, remember, is always the goal. And that is what we see happening in the universe. Anytime there is an ebb and flow energetically in one direction or another, we see that the universe always corrects the balance, right? And this is what happens on the planet. This is what is happening within humanity. We have been for too long in the old paradigm. I like to identify as a paradigm of misery, suffering, pain, and hate, right? Constant warfare on the planet. We see our very own government, and this is my personal opinion, we see our very own government constantly diverting billions and trillions of dollars. Hey, Deanne, thank you so much. I know I could depend on you always. So getting back into this, we know that we can see our own government constantly diverting so much of our money, like literally billions and trillions of dollars, in supporting conflicts around the planet, right? Rather than utilizing those funds to solve domestic issues that are real, that are impactful, that touch people's everyday lives, right? How much, this is a very honest question, right? How much could be done domestically here in this country on these lands, right? We'll get into what this country actually is, and we have discussed that previously. But right here, to help these people here, how much could be done? with the trillions of dollars, right, that have gone toward supporting some conflict, let's say just in the span of the last 10 years. Think about that. We can do and solve a lot more than the talking heads say is impossible, right? There have been examples in the world of other leaders who found a way to get it done, i.e., Muammar Gaddafi, right? And what he did in Libya was essentially that very aim, right? And perhaps that is one of the reasons why, again, this is all my opinion, perhaps that is one of the reasons why the propaganda machine had to first sully his name, his reputation, and his legacy before the actual assault and eventual killing and martyrdom of that great leader, right? But again, we know that there is always this ebb and flow, and we've had a long time in that old paradigm that has seen the flow and the sort of shifting of energy in a preponderance of darkness, quite frankly, but that represents energetically as low vibrational frequency energy, right? Again, in this area of the galaxy that we've made it to currently, we are in higher vibrational frequency energies, right, that foster higher consciousness. And this is what is occurring. If we have not learned or affirmed, right, anything else during this journey that we've had on this podcast, then I most wholeheartedly hope and feel that we have affirmed that humanity has indeed spoken as a collectively, right? If you are able to observe it, right? In that humanity is, in fact, evolving into higher consciousness. All right. Of that much, we are sure. So, folks, that is exactly where we're at, and I think that's worthy of celebration. So, what I'm gonna do is step back, grateful that you all have helped us to get to this point, and that we have had this journey together. And there's most certainly going to be a season 2 bouncing back very soon with some great improvements, right? Both in the structure, subject matter, capabilities of what I'm going to be able to do in the podcast, the setting, everything, right? We're gonna really vamp it up and burst back on the scene with season number 2 of Building with Big King. But again, I want to thank you all so much for this high vibrational frequency journey. Um, you know, I spoke a moment ago about whether or not it can be recognized, whether or not you can see the choice that humanity has made, right? And I think it's evident every day. I know that it's evident and it's affirmed for me because I pay attention. I pay attention to the conversations, like I always say, in the workplaces, at the bus stops, in the businesses, in the stores, places where we bump into each other, gas stations, whatever. People are talking about things that literally we didn't even think about 20 years ago, because there is an enlightening and awakening and awareness level that is making us look around at the world and the way that the world works, the paradigm, and ask the question, why? Right? And when you do that and open up your mind, and then examine what you find with critical thought, right? With open, free thinking thought that is backed up by free thinking, independent research, then there's a whole world of truth and reality and information for you to interpret for yourself, right, and dictate and map out your own version of reality rather than the multi-layered version of reality that we have been indoctrinated with and fed, um, quite literally, even in our school systems, folks. I mean, this is just the reality of it. There are so many things that we were actually taught in school that we now know to not be accurate. That's just the truth, right? That's my opinion. And I most certainly believe that enough evidence has been provided, not only right in this podcast, on my channel, by a multitude of other individuals who do this and other work, to be able to bring free thinking information to the people, right? So, for you to empower me to be able to serve in that role is magnificent. And I thank you all, and I love you all. True indeed. Now, I'm going to kick back, right? Uh, I made my statement and said what I had to say. I'm going to jump into the chat real quick and catch up. And we're going to open up this conversation in a celebratory fashion. Heather says, good evening. Thank you so much, Heather. Heather, good evening to you. And then Deanne, from Connecting the Dots with Deanne, please, everybody, make sure that you are checking out Deanne's channel. Very informative and powerful. Check her out. Connecting the Dots with Deanne. Deanne said, did you see that shots were fired at Trump at the Butler rally? No. What? Connecting the Dots with Deanne. Deanne says, it seems to have grazed his ear. He was limping when the SS moved him to a black SUV. They life flighted him in an Allegheny General trauma helicopter. What? He's likely in Pittsburgh by now. The SS says, the Secret Service, obviously she's referring to, says he is okay. We need that higher consciousness more than ever now. Wow. Folks, first of all, it's good that the man's okay. We don't want violence or harm to come to anyone, period. Stop right there. So good thing that the man's okay. And we see that there are those who would take what we refer to as drastic steps. I told you over and over again, folks, that the low vibrational frequency sort of side of this thing, the myopic socially economic elite who seem to be driven by and obsessed with this dystopian nightmare of a future, and holding on to dragging their version of the old paradigm into the future, which is not going to happen. Period. Stop. End of that. And because of that, they're extremely frustrated, desperate, and behaving erratically, right? And we see such examples of that erratic behavior. We could say that it was the left, but in this particular instance, we would just be affirming that the left is just acting as a hand of the same entity or group of individuals and entities and organizations, etc., that all represent the same agenda, right? Keeping the socially economic elite in power over a weakened majority that they want to now whittle down. Remember, their dystopian nightmare of the future included only 500 million of us as a population, folks, when we know there's almost 8 billion of us right now. So are these the folks that we want it all to be in decision-making capacity or roles where they serve to make and create policy that is impactful on the institutions that touch and affect and impact greatly our everyday lives and the lives of our families? Is that what we want? It's a fair question to ask, right? You can't attach any, conspiracy to it. It's just a fair question to ask, given what we see. Do we want these people in charge of our collective future? And I would venture to say the resounding answer for most people, as most people's eyes are far wider than they've ever been. They are open and paying attention. The world is awakening. And the resounding answer seems to be no, we don't want that. Folks, you've got, amidst this hellish and horrific scene that we see going on in the Middle East and the Gaza Strip, and between Israel and the Palestinians, or should I say Israel's prime minister and those who support his agenda. Brother Sean, thank you. Yes, that's right, brother. That's the first step, standing up and saying, no, this is not what we want. We're not having it. True indeed. I'm going to jump back in the chat and catch up. So, yes, Heather, Deanne, you're right. We do need higher consciousness now more than ever. And Heather comes in with, oh, goodness. True indeed, we do. Yes, the Secret Service. Heather comes back and says, wow, talk about a shield of protection. True indeed. Sean says, no, please. Then Deanne comes back and says, Lulu was there. And she said they also brought in a bomb squad because someone left a suspicious package, right? So again, what is the methodology? Constantly keep distractions going. See, this is when we need to turn up our antennas and be paying attention to what's going on. When you see them doing something that diverts your attention to it, I'm not saying don't be aware of it, but realize there's likely something else also going on simultaneously that they don't want your attention on. Okay? Before I got back in the chat, I was starting to talk about the fact that right now in Israel, there are children of both Israeli and Palestinian descent protesting against this senseless madness and bloodshed. The children know better, folks. Come on, the world is changing. It's time for it to happen. Put our energy, our envisionment, right, as we start to envision what the future looks like, understand it's not the same, and it's not going to be worse in terms of leaning toward that dystopian nightmare of a reality they want to steer us toward. We're not having that. We simply are not. Jump back in the chat. Okay, we're good. So Sean, again, thank you for being here. Do you have any comments on this? I was unaware. Thank you, first of all, for bringing that to my attention, Deanne. I believe you brought that up. Did this even happen? I did not know that Trump was even in town, first of all. And I didn't know that there was a rally down, I guess you're saying, on Butler Street. Or perhaps were you saying Butler, PA, which is not that far from Pittsburgh. Either way, Pittsburgh folks also know this is a very important place. We don't realize sometimes the importance of the location of things and why things happen at certain locations, right? Remember, the ancestral name of these lands is Dayan Ga. Diane Ga. I hope I'm saying that clearly enough for folks. The ancestral name, or one of the most important ancestral names of these lands that Pittsburgh rests on, is Diane Ga, loosely translated as the navel of the galaxy, right? And I do know for a fact, because I did a little researching into it myself, that there was a contingency of Tibetan monks, right, and Mayan priests, amongst other spiritual leaders, who converged down at the point in Pittsburgh, PA, or in Diane Ga, to have a very special spiritual ceremony, right? In this very important place, where there's not just three rivers, but also a fourth, if you count the underground river or aquifer that flows down in that direction. So, powerful, folks. There are reasons behind things or happenings and events that are esoteric seeming, but are heavily weighted by those in these covert and nefarious operations, and who have these dark and nefarious agendas through which they're upholding in a multitude of nefarious means, right? All right. So, what is up? What's the topic? So, the topic, brother, first of all, with this being um, the final episode of the season, I did do a little brief wrap up, but basically, my statement was that we understand and have come to understand now that the ebb and flow, the push pull energetically on the planet echoes what we see in the rest of the universe, right? That there is always some motion in the ebb and flow, or the push pull energetically in one direction or the other, and it for a long time, for thousands of years on this planet, has been in favor, or an energy that has supported the old paradigm that I have liked to label as misery, pain, and hate, right? And now we're in an area that simply does not support that paradigm anymore. It supports and fosters the evolution of higher consciousness for the human collective, right? And that we have affirmed, certainly through these magnificent conversations that we've had thus far, we have affirmed that that is in fact occurring now. So that was the genesis of the conversation. um, Connecting the dots, it was Butler County Fairgrounds is where Trump was injured at by an assailant utilizing, I'm imagining, some form of a high-powered rifle, um, based on this report. Did you know at what point was a fort? Oh, the point, yeah, most certainly. So the point is deep and has a very deep historical significance, right? Certainly, if we talk about the conflict between some of the early generals for the colonies, right? Like General Washington, who had some incredibly fierce and important battles against what is referred to as the Native Americans, or Indians, which we know now in all reality are people that look just like me and you, many of you. As we now know, the farce that has been uncovered about the concept of every quote unquote black person, which we know we're not that, but every quote unquote black person in America being of slave descent and from Africa. We know that in fact was a farce, and essentially we were here when any uh, European settlers or explorers came to these lands. We were already here when the individuals that they referred to as Indians, those who crossed the Bering Strait, when they got here, we were here already. So um, that's something that's been gaining a lot of steam. And again, big shout out and a salute to Dane Calloway, right? And the work that he does in that arena is like mind blowing. You got to check him out. Please do. Please check out Dane Calloway, right? You can go right to his YouTube channel. But yeah, back to the significance of the fort. Also, not only does it represent all that military significance, and the power play, it was a huge power play. Right now, to this day, there is a statue of Washington and this like sort of, battle ready stance against a a native brother in a similar stance, right? Where like it's like symbolizing the clash, right? This was a very important and powerful um, land acquisition and struggle that those colonists felt had to occur for a multitude of reasons. Some nationalists, but others even more dark and nefarious as they have their esoteric importance, right? So now back to the fort. The fort itself, if you mark it off, like walk it off, or were to have an aerial view of it and took a pencil or a pen and marked it off, you can see that it is in fact a pentagram, right? And its positioning with the way the stars appear in this particular part of the globe in various seasons, right? Its positioning is very interesting. As if I'm not mistaken, you can see that dog star cluster, right? That is referred to in the Syrian the name escapes me, but you all know what I'm referring to with a group of stars. Um, Somebody will help me out in a minute, I'm sure. But anyway, that cluster of stars, right? And some other clusters of stars. But the significance is very deep when you mark it off and see the exactness, and it's still essentially like the foundation is intact, right? I mean, there's grass there, but you can see it's not even completely covering grass. There's like it's like bricked off the entire outer etching of the fort, and still the points that would make the pentagram. Um, which a pentagram is not necessarily always a dark thing, folks, but it is always representative of something of a spiritual nature, right? And I could tell you that the founding forefathers, right, in this country were very much into the esoteric arts, especially Benjamin Franklin, for example, who belonged to a French secret society, the Order of the Nine Sisters. Um, so, and some of the stuff that he did, even with the signing of the Declaration of the Independence and its timing, right? Um, which I believe is at the witching hour of midnight. Um, or was it? If it wasn't, it might have been 3:33, which we also know to be a very esoterically powerful time of the PM, right? Or actually, it's the AM, but we will refer to it as night, because it is still night, because the sun hadn't risen yet. But yeah, no, but there really is great importance to that fort, and there's a lot of information on it. If you do digging into it, you'll find a great deal. I took a tour that was very informative on that subject as well. Had some great speakers and researchers like the brother Ross Ben, for example, amongst others. Shout out to all of you. Um, who have that tour. They even had another tour since then that I didn't attend, but I know it was. I'm sure it was fantastic. Okay, catching back up. The fort was the French, I believe. The fort was actually not a full fort when the French occupied it and were quickly defeated in that area by, if I'm not mistaken, a coalition of the colonists and the natives when they had treaties at that time, right? Then, of course, the colonists broke. This is my recollection of it. Heavily, actually, leaning on what I was taught in school, which is pretty wild. But then the colonists, like I said, gained control of it, and it very quickly became Fort Pitt, and that could be leading to what was the huge conflict between the quote unquote Indians or Native Americans, really us, who were indigenous in the area at the time. So I would like to not. I would like to know, and we'll end up be doing more research into exactly what the crux was of the origination of that conflict. Like what really touched that off to be this great conflict, specifically over that area, right? Um, it's really deep. There's a lot. There's so much more here about this area than the average person knows, particularly the average person who lives here. There's so much more about Pittsburgh that people don't know. It's a really deep place for real. Like there's a lot of great secrets. I don't know if they're great. When I say great, I mean large in size. I don't mean good. But there's a lot of secrets that have been kept um, very tightly so that are coming out, like as is so much coming out. And remember, folks, this is the Keystone State. So a lot of things that have happened in Pittsburgh, in Philadelphia, in Altoona, and in Harrisburg, and other places in the state are very important to the bridging or the expanding of the 13 colonies into what eventually became the westward expansion. Remember, this is the area that they considered to be the gateway to the West. Now, that is most certainly one of the very prominent significances and importances of this area, is that it was considered to be the gateway to the West. Literally, those like Wagoneer trails went right through this area, through into Ohio and West Virginia, and continued on westward. And there was a great importance to that expansion, right? As more and more of our land got gobbled up by the ever expanding corporate monstrosity that was growing. But anyway, I digress. Brother Sean goes on to say, one of the changes that I've heard and know uh, is on that in the talks of tearing down the Statue of Liberty. That's deep. That is deep. That is deep. Also, has anyone heard of the Chevron case that just was adjudicated in the favor of the people? Was not aware of that. Thank you for reporting that, Sean, we appreciate that tremendously, bringing that awareness. No, and I, for one, will do more free thinking research into that, and I'll likely include it in a video that I post to the channel. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. And did you have anything else you wanted to chime in on about that? Deanne says the Chevron case is going to be huge. I would imagine. I would imagine. Folks, I told you it's all coming out in 2024. Um, you know, I'm not in the competition, right? Uh, my man Cat Williams made the prediction that it was coming out in 2024, but that was a little bit after me. Nah, but really, this is that year. This is an important and powerful year that we are living in right now, folks. There is a Hopi saying about this time, this era that we are in the planet, that this is most certainly the most difficult and the most important and exciting time to be alive on the planet. We are literally making our way through and forging a new paradigm on this planet as we foster in higher consciousness. Folks, this changes everything. All right. Deanne comes back with it will likely be the end of three-letter agencies. There's a lot that's going to come down, right? I'm telling you, folks, another thing that was a wild card was when that hearing on UFO and UAPs happened in Congress. Why was it so paramount? First of all, yes, it took away the stigma of the subject matter and created a forum for open-mindedness, right? Which was very much needed, not only in the scientific community, but in society in general, right? Especially uh, in professional rankings. Uh, uh, People who are like airplane pilots and so airline pilots should be able to make these reportings without fear of stigma or potentially losing their jobs and their career, right? So that was important in that regard. But potentially even more important was the money trail, folks. Huh? Think about it for a second. If they're exposing the fact that these folks have been able to sequester the capturing of UFO, UAP vehicles, right, and their pilots, right, and these incredibly expensive facilities, and all the money that it took, taxpayer dollars, right, that go into accounting for all those trillions of dollars that seem to continue to come up missing, as the Pentagon, for one, as one major agency that continues to fail its audits. Folks, this stuff is huge and is continuing to come out and just flow like a dam that is breaking at the seams and literally about to burst, right? All right. So good evening. Not real chimes in, and Sean says one of the changes that I've heard. Okay, we talked about the Statue of Liberty, the Chevron case. The Chevron case is going to be huge, and potentially the ending of the three-letter agencies. Folks, there's going to be so much that is ending, it'll make our heads spin, right? There is epic changes in the works and happening right now. So, we've got to continue to surge powerfully forward and continue to take steps every single day to literally put in the framework, the diligent task of building a framework through which we can really see our society expand and grow as we see ourselves really grow and expand into higher consciousness, right? That's the goal. That's what we're aiming for, right? And you know how I like to say it. Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq. Um, Let me get a little bit more out of the and. They were not laws, right? Okay, I hear you. We do need to recognize our own sovereignty and not allow ourselves to become subjugated under these concepts that reinforce some picture or falsity of this condition or this supposed agreement of becoming or being existing as citizens in this essentially corporate structure that we would refer to as the United States of America, right? Um, we need to recognize our sovereignty out of these systems, in my opinion, right? And honestly, if you apply a little open minded, free thinking thought, right? You can't help but to ask the question why. And when you ask why, you'll find yourself digging more and more and more, uncovering more every time you start to dig. You will find more, right? And that is the state of it, and where it remains and will remain is that with open minds, we will continue to learn and uncover more of what has been a very um, uh, sequestered and hidden past worth of um, very debatable and very uh, uh, polarizing subject matter that I really think we need to collectively take a closer look at, right? And certainly we are seeing that. And that will continue to happen. And as it does, we will continue to bounce more and more free thinking, high consciousness ideas off of one another and continue to grow in that regard, right? And as we do that, I catch back up in the chat, and Sean says we need to start getting our communities together. Those that are critical, thinking, openness, self motivation, and more importantly, self unconditional love. True indeed, this has got to be fueled and powered by unconditional love. And the strongest love, just like Whitney said, the greatest love of all is love and learning to love yourself. Folks, we have had a hard time loving ourselves as individuals and collectively. We've got to get back to loving ourselves, to establishing that connection with the creative source and loving our creator unfathomably powerful, right? Loving our creator, the highest love that we can muster, knowing that we were created as beautiful expressions of our creator's energy, right? That looks like this, right? As we look in the mirror, all of us, and see the beauty of our own creation, right? That is where the greatest love should lie. All right. I jumped back in the chat and I jumped down to connecting the dots with Deanne. So Deanne says, I wholeheartedly agree with Sean. Two people are hurt from the rally. That is sad news to hear. Anybody getting hurt in what should have been a peaceful gathering and something for people to grow from. It is sad and quite regrettable that we see that there's obviously been some serious injuries, right? Um, we send our hearts and we send energetic healing and aid, right, directly from our conscious connection to the creative source, um, and extending that out to all involved and to everyone on the planet as we continue to send out high vibrational frequency energies and true unconditional love, right? Um, Folks, anybody else have anything that they want to jump in the chat and comment on? Once again, we have had reports coming in, streaming in about a shooting or some sort of an attempt involving a shooting, um, an attempt on former President Trump, right here in Butler County, I believe. Butler County Fairgrounds, I believe, has been identified as the location. So it has been reported, as far as I know, that former President Trump is recovering and is going to be all right, right? Certainly, we don't ever wish any harm on anyone, right? We're not about violence and we don't support or cheer that on, period, right? Um, but again, folks, we can agree that we have gotten to a point, even though we still got a lot of steps to go on that list of baby steps, right? We can agree that we are moving in the right direction. We are moving forward toward establishing and cementing in our new high vibrational frequency paradigm, right? And I like to say it's a paradigm that exhibits, that exudes peace, love, respect. True indeed. I appreciate you all more than I can say. Does anybody else have anything that they want to jump in the chat and say as we wrap up this last episode of the first season? Anybody else want to jump in the chat and say something to the family, as this has been truly a magnificent forum for us all? Anybody else? All right, listen. The truth is that I love you all, one and the same. We all are one, truly. So let's continue to surge powerfully forward. Let's keep our heads lifted high. Make sure you're getting outside, get barefoot, get on that ground and that grass and ground up with great Gaia and let that energy surge into you. Let all the stress and the strife just flow on out of you as you ground yourself with Gaia. Hug a tree, folks, from time to time, as trees are actual extensions of great Gaia's energy and spiritual presence surging forth from the earth, right? Powerfully so. Trees very powerful, and our connection to the planet is incredibly powerful and important, right? So as I jump back in the chat, basically we just wrapped it up and we're saying thank you to one another and we're grateful. I again thank all of you. It has been a magnificent conversation and a magnificent first season, right? I'm not sure I could have asked for better. I'm just so incredibly grateful that you all have done this for me in terms of giving me this forum and the ability to call folks together and start to bust it up on some real and important, some really powerful issues and subject matter. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I love you all. And you know I'm fitting to say it. Thank you for the worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq, I love you all. And indeed, I am out.